So let's start with the meditation. And what I'd like you to do is, if you can, just sitting up in a nice posture so your spine is as extended as possible, and feel free to make adjustments. Try not to lean too heavily on the back of if you're in a chair, you can absolutely meditate in a chair. So try not to have yourself leaning too heavily against a wall or the chair, because your back will become strong over time. We just train ourselves. We want to train our body to familiarize our posture like this as best as possible. And the main part is to be relaxed. To be relaxed. If you're in a chair, have your feet straight down. And if you can feel them grounded on the floor, the bottoms of your feet are on a cushion that your feet are on. But feel that grounding, first of all, as you lightly close your eyes to bring that gaze inward. And as you begin to deepen your respiration, feel from the earth our underlying support, as if there are roots coming through the earth, coming into you. So these are not roots that are holding you down. These are roots of support that allow you to branch out into your practice. And as you deepen the respiration right now, allow the inhalation to bring space into the branches from those roots. And it brings space into any tight places you might be noticing in your body, into any areas of constriction in your mind. Bringing in the space as we inhale. As we exhale, releasing the tension. Consider your motivation right now for joining our time together, because there are many, many different things we could be doing. You decided to choose this right now, which can be fantastic for your practice and your life to counter negative mind states as they arise. That's Dharma practice. That's the essence of Dharma practice. Countering delusion. Can we mute the microphones? Thank you. So consider a Mahayana motivation, which is really about being of the most benefit to living beings. And the means for doing that is to become a fully enlightened being, a Buddha. But the real purpose is to benefit all living beings, to help and serve perfectly all sentient beings. So if that interests you, feel free to include that in your motivation. The motivation is you directing your mind in a most positive direction, and you are taking control of your mind to direct it in that way, rather than letting all the distractions of life and all the things swirling around you take control of your mind, distracting. So just take a moment setting that positive motivation for our time and all the activities of the rest of your day. And I'd like you right now to imagine you're lying on your back on a grassy hillside. You're looking up into the expanse of the clear blue sky. Clear blue sky, which you have certainly in New Mexico. For those of you that are in New Mexico, that crystal luminous blue that goes on for miles, vast, luminous, unobscured. And as much as you can right now, I'd like you to merge your experience, your mind, with that vast, spacious luminosity of the sky that is like your mind. And should your mind wander after a thought, another experience, something on your agenda today you need to get to later, again, simply distraction. Just become aware without any further judgment. You simply bring your mind back to merging your mind with the clear, spacious luminosity of the clear blue sky that is like your mind. Now, occasionally, clouds will appear in the sky, light, puffy clouds like mundane thoughts that pop up in our mind. Yet sometimes the entire sky is obscured by a heavy bank of rain clouds. So we know the sky, the clear blue luminosity is back there, but it's obscured. Like when we have a heavy delusion in our mind, a heavy imbalance in the mind, like anger, fear, attachment, depression, jealousy, pride, confusion. I think you get the idea. There's simply temporary mind states brought on by previous familiarity with those mind states They're not really the nature of your mind. Just like the bank of rain clouds is not the sky, but it appears to be the sky as it's obscuring the clear blue radiance. So, as you notice thoughts and distractions popping up in your mind, as you try to keep your mind focused on the clear, blue, radiant vastness of the sky that is like your mind, just notice those distractions, let them go, trying as best to keep your mind focused on the clear, spacious luminosity. Now, just notice when a thought arises. You have some distraction and a thought pops up. Could be just a little bubble, light puffy cloud. It could be a bigger cloud, something heavier, a concern, a worry. Ask yourself, where does the thought come from? Can you catch for a moment the space between the thoughts? There is a space there. So instead of getting involved in the thoughts, the distractions, can you focus instead on the space? Just try your best. And just briefly return yourself, again, lying on the grassy hillside, and now back into the space in which you're sitting. And slowly relax, and when you're ready, please slowly open your eyes. Just curious right now, any observations overall from the meditation? I'm sure many of you have done the meditation before, which comes in our mind and its potential course of discovering Buddhism, mind and its potential. It's a meditation on the clarity of consciousness, the clarity of consciousness. So it's a very nice way to slowly begin to look at your minds. And some of you have done courses like that. Some people are newer, perfectly fine. Just any observations?
I loved being on that hillside. That was like the perfect place to be.
Yes. And it's I know it's hard to focus for a moment. You need to, these are meditations that are designed for you to do over and over. Like our meditations are not just a one shot, I did that meditation. It doesn't penetrate as deeply. And honestly, I've just noticed from my own meditation practice, these meditations really are designed to repeat, repeat. Then they tend to go to a deeper level, and you suddenly say, oh, I've caught the space now. I'm looking at the space instead. Because the space is the nature of your mind. So in Buddhism, and in order to get at your negative emotions, negative states, we have to understand our mind. Okay? So and some of you have done mind courses, and I'm just curious from that, there's two qualities in Tibetan Buddhism, two characteristics that make up your mind. Now, if you've done these courses, please don't answer right now. But for those of you that have not done courses on the mind and have not heard before about the two characteristics of mind, I'm just curious, your mind, not your brain, but your consciousness or mind, I'm using those as synonyms, okay? They have two qualities according to Tibetan Buddhism, only two qualities. Any ideas what they might be? Any guesses? Just take a guess. What would you say when you think of your mind? What do you feel about your mind?
Distraction.
Sorry?
Distraction.
Distraction. Yeah, distraction, right? Some people would say busyness, right? What else? What else do you notice about your mind?
When you asked where does the thought come from, I didn't know.
Right. Have we ever thought about that? Have we ever thought of, when you say, where does a thought come from? Now most people don't care. Most people on our planet, like, who's got time to think about that, right? Okay, but this is how you get at negative emotions. If your negative emotions, if you're okay with those, which I have a feeling you may not be, which is why you turned up for the class, right? We don't like when we get jealous, and we don't like when we're afraid, and when we're really distracted and really attached, and we don't like when we get angry and you snap at people. We want to be able to control it. That's Dharma. That's Dharma practice. In order to do that, you need to start to understand your mind. That's the beginning of waking up. And it's exciting. It's exciting. And it keeps you away, honestly, from boredom. A lot of people said to me in the pandemic, they've watched all their Netflix videos, they did all these courses, they've done some trainings, they're working, and they're bored. Once you start practicing Dharma and start watching your mind, you're never bored again. It's really hard to get bored. And I'll give you some examples of what I mean by that. Okay, so we've got distraction in the mind, and we've got like considering, well, what are those? What are the spaces between the thoughts? Is there space there between the thoughts? Where does the thought come from? Okay, great questions. So I'm going to give you the two qualities of mind. They're going to be a little surprising for some of you. One quality, if you're ready for this, the mind is clear. It has a clear light nature. Clarity is one aspect, one characteristic of the mind. Clarity, not distraction. Not distraction, actually clarity. And most people say to me, my mind's not clear, because you haven't trained it. Because it's not trained. It's trained in distraction. It's trained in distraction. Our whole planet is well versed in distraction. Okay? The second quality is the mind knows things. It's aware. So what they'd say, the two characteristics of mind or consciousness in Tibetan Buddhism is clarity and awareness. And we just did a meditation briefly on the clarity of consciousness. So I would ask you this week, if you want to stick with this and you want to, is to do that meditation again and again this week as much as you can. 15, 20 minutes a day. Imagine you're on the grassy hillside. Next week, we're going to do it in a different way, but I just want you to stay that vastness. Eventually, the more and more you merge yourself with that experience of the sky, clear, radiant, luminous, vast, expansive, that's actually your mind. That's what your mind is like. But we don't tap into that. We tap into a very narrow little box of our mind. And a lot of people are satisfied with that. Okay. You could do so much more if you tap in to the real qualities of your mind, release yourself from delusion and distraction that actually really keep you held down in pain and suffering a lot and confusion. Okay. So you can slowly do that meditation this week if you can. It's really helpful. Okay. So we've got these two qualities of mind. The mind is clear and it's aware. The mind knows things. We understand that clarity. We're going to do some meditations on how the mind knows things in the future. So let's bring this into our negative emotions. What's going on with our emotions? What I'd say as far as looking at these 5 sessions, Buddhism deals with all of these imbalances and delusions, like I mentioned, anger and fear, anxiety, jealousy, all these things. We practice a middle way. We practice a middle way. What we mean is we don't suppress them. I've seen people pretending to practice Buddhism. They're furiously angry and they'll say, I'm not angry. I'm fine. That's not Buddhism. That's not Dharma practice. And the other second part we don't do, the other extreme, is we don't act out. So I'm not suddenly angry and I just blow up at everybody. That's not okay in Buddhism either. What we choose is the middle way. Now, I'm not using the middle way in reference to a very profound part of the philosophy, emptiness. I'm just using it as a way to look at how are we dealing with our negative mind states, okay? So again, if I'm not suppressing it, what Buddhism is often doing is saying, wow, this guy just jutted in front of me in his car. He didn't signal. I got a little bit afraid because I almost hit him. Then I was afraid the car behind me was going to hit me. Very common experience. So you slam on the brakes, car has a bit abrupt stop. And what it tends to do, okay, if you're noticing your mind, okay, first you might notice you're really angry at the person, that jerk, right? And then people like to make a rude hand gesture, okay? But what you do as a Buddhist is you're going to notice the anger right away. No question. Irritation or, oh, that person got in front of me. But later, if you can't deal with it in the moment, what we do in Buddhism is you want to build and construct that meditation practice. That's your support. And I know it's not easy to get going. I know it's not easy. I'm actually doing a course in April, the middle weekend, I think in April for Milarepa, and you can pop into any part you'd like, but people wanted to know, how do I do a Lamrim meditation retreat? Like, how do I meditate on the philosophy? And if I want to do a little day-long or weekend retreat on my own, how do I set up sessions? So that's what I'm going to talk about. They asked me to talk on that for a weekend. It's like 3 sessions, or so it's pretty short, three sessions, and you can just pop into any time. Obviously, if you do all of it, I think you'll get much more out of it. And I'll put my website up there later where the link is. So what we do is I go back to my cushion, my meditation practice later in the day, and I go, oh God, I was so irritated. I was so angry when I was driving at that guy and I didn't like my response, that I was so angry. So let me look at that. And I'm sitting on the cushion. And when you're quieter and you look for a moment, what you notice, I mentioned this a moment ago, what's underneath the anger? Is it just anger? Is your mind just consumed? What's underneath the anger? Anybody? Let me
Fear.
look. Fear. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Fear is so suddenly you've stripped away and you go, well, yeah, I was afraid I was going to have an accident. I was afraid somebody hit me behind me, that I was going to hit somebody. Fear. There's something underneath fear as well. Any ideas? Or that's going to be your homework for the week. I want you to figure out, and you have to look at your mind this week. If you have anxiety coming up, what's the container for it? You know, you almost hit somebody with the car. So first there's a little bit irritation, anger. Hey, get out of my, hey, jerk. Okay, but underneath you go, wow, I was afraid. You know, years ago I was teaching when I lived in California in Santa Cruz. We had a big class that met weekly. And we used to deal with people's stuff, like whatever they brought in that week. And one woman came in raging. She came in all about the very dangerous highway near Santa Cruz, very dangerous roadway. She was on it coming from San Jose, connecting. And somebody got in front of her. And it's a roadway. Everybody drives too fast. There's many fatal accidents on this roadway. And she came in fuming because somebody got in front, cut her off, didn't signal. And she was so angry. And she just had to talk about it in the beginning of the class. She went on, like really angry. And all of a sudden she stopped. And we were working to kind of calm her down and lend perspective. And she stopped and suddenly she said, oh, I was afraid I was going to have an accident. Yeah. So she caught underneath the fear. And underneath the fear, there's something else. So see if you can check your mind, see what you come up with. So it's nice what we're doing in meditation is we're peeling the layers of the onion. You want to get at the core. What we do with healthcare, as you know, you go to the doctor, you have a pain, and they start addressing what they think it could be. They examine, they might do tests, run blood work, whatever it is, right? But sometimes they treat the symptom, but they don't get at the cause. They don't get at the cause, and it's not helpful because the symptom, you take a pain reliever, but it doesn't really cure and fix the underlying thing that's causing the symptom. So the symptom remains, and then you continually start to take the medication. So with our mind, we really want to get at the root cause. What causes these suffering things, and how do we fix it? So that's the beginning of starting. You're starting. Some of you are full into this. Some of you are brand new. Perfect. You have to start looking at your mind, and it's the reason in our Discovering Buddhism modules of teaching, it's a certain course, there's 14 different modules. The first one is mind and its potential, because we want to look at our minds. That's how we get into this. So we're not going to suppress what's going on. I'm not angry, I'm not afraid, but I'm not going to act out and give somebody the finger in the car. That's also not going to be helpful. To snap at somebody, to have some little snippy, sarcastic remark at them. But it also doesn't help for you to do that for yourself, to shut down on yourself, which is another type of person's response. You get quiet, you get depressed. That courts depression. So basically in Buddhism, what we do is I'm going to look at it, I'm going to go back to my quiet space, whether it's you're sitting on your couch, sometime alone, quietly looking at your mind. What the hell was going on? Excuse my French, but you know, what was going on with me? Why was I so disturbed? And this can be any time in your day. And I notice this all day long with different students I talk with, and you're fine in the morning, everything's going along great, you feel really great. And then a phone call with somebody, you're looking at something on social media, something in the news, you checked on your phone, or you get an email and something changes and there is a cloud has crossed the horizon and you're not happy. Look at what changed. What happened? And you yourself need to get honest with what is going on. Did you have an expectation of something? You were supposed to do this today and the person can't meet you. Did the person disappoint you? Did they say something rude to you that offhand? Did they have that thing happen to them that you wanted and you really wanted to be included in that and they didn't include you? There's so many different things going on. You heard that they got together with so-and-so and you wanted to be part of that, whatever it is. You missed hearing about that class that you wanted to do, and why didn't the person tell you when you asked them to let you know? Okay. So you want to look at, and then once you see the dimension around that, can you go underneath to check your mind state and your motivation in the interaction, in the incident, like that? What's happening for you? So that's a way you start to, and that's a way that we're not suppressing, I'm not acting out, I'm going to choose this middle way to look. The middle way involves acknowledging, okay, first acknowledging Okay, what disturbing emotion is taking root right now? What's arising in the mind? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply antidotes that we're going to discuss in this course. I'm going to work on those with those antidotes to transform my state of mind from something negative to positive. That helps me avoid harming myself, and it helps me avoid harming others. That's what these sessions are about. Okay, so I think some of the outcomes you can reap from this is a good understanding of your mind, consciousness, how it works, what emotions are, how they arise. You'll be able to identify, and what I would say is you want to identify your principal disturbing emotions first to work on them. Like we have all the delusions, like I've mentioned, we all experience all of them. But when I mentioned anxiety, fear, depression, anger, attachment, pride, jealousy. When I mention things like that, forgetfulness, laziness, things like that, a few of them, a couple may have popped up where you were like, oh, that's me. So those are the ones you'd want to go after first. And you want to learn as much as you can about them. You want to catch them as they arise in your mind. And you want to learn the antidotes specifically for those. The other thing that this does, once you get into your mind and applying antidotes and learning, and you become, what's important is to become friends with your mind. You become friends with yourself. That's what meditation helps you with. It's really brilliant because it gives you confidence, not only in your life, but on the Buddhist path, on a spiritual path, but definitely gives you confidence in your life's activities. Why? Because you're doing the best you can. You're doing the best you can. And in a sense, you're embracing all those various aspects of yourself, all those behaviors. Whether you might say you like them or not, we learn to embrace them all because I'm doing the best I can with them by applying my practice when the negative ones arise. And that's the best you can do, like that. What happens for a long time is we push the negative things out of the way. I deny it. I don't want to see it. And when it happens, I get depressed and I get angry at myself. Hey, we're human beings. So again, I don't know your mind. I don't know if you're a Buddha, but the nature of being a Buddha is you have no negative mind states, no delusions, no imbalances, right? But human nature does. That's its nature. It's flawed. I'm not laying a trip on myself or you, but I'm just talking about reality. So I know as a human being, I will make mistakes. And the more I accept that, I'm okay now when I make a mistake. I don't lay a big trip on myself. I don't have a sweeping negative judgment. But I work on the mistake. I try to learn from the mistake so I don't have to repeat it too many times like that. That's practice. And it gives me confidence. But it also makes me more peaceful because when I see a negative thing arise, and here's what does happen over time. If, let's say, anger is one of your things, and you have it, what they might say, a short fuse. You get very angry. I used to be this way when I was younger, short fuse. So now what happens is I deal a lot with anger in my mind and apply the proper antidotes. I've been doing it for years. So I do notice still in my mind occasionally irritation, annoyance, frustration arise, lesser degrees of anger. But I catch them there before it's full-blown anger. And I'll notice. So let's say somebody's walking towards you that you found in the past really irritating. They're a difficult person, you might say. And here they come now. This is our practice. Whatever is walking toward us at any given moment. That's our practice. And as Pema Chodren, the wonderful nun who founded Gampo Abbey, she's in a different tradition, she says, your practice is leaning into the sharp points, the sharp edges. That's the practice. So here comes your difficult person, right? I see them and I'll notice irritation arise in the mind. Oh no, or wow, they're really a talker. They're really gonna be like, how I'm in a hurry right now and I don't really have time to talk to them. Like, what am I gonna do? We have these things happen, right? So I'll just notice the bubble of irritation floating up, or a little desperation, whatever. No judgment on myself, no judgment on them, no hostility towards them, or, I can still be very friendly to them. I feel spacious. I'm just noticing irritation, little bubble of irritation arise, right? And I notice it. I observe my mind. Aha, just in front of them. Here they come. Just notice. I don't say anything, but I just notice because I know my mind enough to catch irritation. And I'll be like, yeah, there's that bubble of irritation. I know that really well. Okay, no worries. If it's a bubble, bubbles are light. I can easily let it go and let it float off and watch it float off. Maybe you visualize for a moment in your mind popping the bubble. You just quickly in your mind, gone. Hello, right? But I also use humor. I use humor a lot to counter anger because anger can be so dark and rigid, right? Using humor, I'll notice the irritation arise, and then there's a little voice in my head that will say, only to myself, of course, Amy, don't open your mouth right now. And I'll just be smiling. And I know if some little irritating word's going to come out, I'm not going to be saying it. Just have a smile on my face. And then that word is easily absorbed. And I'm able to say, hello, how are you? And I'm spacious and I'm happy to greet them. And I am actually genuinely happy to see the person at that point. But I might follow and say to them, it's so good to see you, but I'm rushing off right now. But it's authentic. It's exactly what's going on. It's no problem. But I'm not kind of like avoiding them, rushing off where they saw that I saw them, but I don't want to, I'm ignoring them or I'm hostile. No, I can be in full expression of who I am, observing my irritation, rolling it in, with an antidote, not acting it out, can still find the bodhicitta there, the pleasantness. Why? Because there's a mother sentient being in front of me. Okay. And my motivation, you've got to have that motivation going. The beginning of the day, bring it up during the day. The motivation in this tradition, as I've said many times before, is we want to become Buddhas. We want to become fully awake. But that's not the end all. That's not why, so I'm a Buddha. No, so I can benefit all living beings. Emphasis on all living beings. And if you hear Lama Zopa Rinpoche when he teaches sometimes, all living beings, big emphasis on the all living beings. That was my motivation this morning. Here comes irritating person. And I'm really ready. I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Mahayana Buddhist. So I want to benefit all living beings, except this jerk. That's not going to work. Then don't call yourself a Mahayana Buddhist, right? No, especially this person. So that's a way you observe your mind slowly. It takes time. It's a process. It's not going to happen in 2 weeks. You're not going to be done. It's lives long process. And I observe irritation arise. Yeah, I see it. Let it go calmly. This person is just like me, struggling along. They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. All those other things. I can do this. I can be spacious, greet them nicely, and off I go to my next activity. Tell them what's going on. So you build confidence in the practice. This really works. I feel okay. I didn't short them. I didn't ignore them. I wasn't rude to them. They're struggling just like me. I'm no better than them, like that. I'm irritating to other people possibly, right? We're all in the same boat together. So this is where you really start to build confidence in yourself by also embracing all the other aspects of yourself that you're not that comfortable with. We become comfortable, we become friends with all those delusions as well. And that's when they start going away. Okay. Let me just, while I'm here, just for a moment, any questions so far? Okay. And again, I've mentioned a number of these I'm sorry, the disturbing emotions: anger, attachment, jealousy, and which could be envy, pride, depression, fear, worry, anxiety. I put those all in one lump. Guilt. How about guilt? Right? Okay.
I've got a really silly one to mention that used to get me. I would get angry at myself for getting angry.
Yeah, of course. That's not silly at all. That's standard. That's standard. And when people become Buddhists or they're interested in a spiritual path, let's say, they have this idea they should never be angry. Okay, well, if anger is one of your big things, good luck with that. You know, people have a thing like, as a Buddhist nun, I should never get angry. I'm a human being. I'm sorry. You know, I rarely have full blown anger, but I get irritated. I get irritated at things. I get frustrated with samsara. Oh my goodness. You know, I
But
keep
you're
trying.
patient with yourself.
You have to be patient with yourself. And you have to be patient with yourself in this process. Absolutely. People are not. I've had people, students that come up and they'll say, okay, I've been meditating for 2 months and I'm still angry. 2 months, and you're 40 years old. Is that realistic? So you have to also be not only patient, let's be realistic on the path, right? Realistic. If you've been doing something, if you're 40 years old, you've got habits, heavy habits of 30 years, you've been doing it one way, right? Like I'll give you from 10 years old. You're somewhat formed at 10 years old with ideas and behavioral traits, and you're bringing them in, I believe, from other lives when you look at it. So 30 years of doing it one way and you think you're going to fix it in 2 months, please be patient with yourself. Give yourself a break. So the anger is going to come up. This is the be gentle with yourself, as Lama Yeshe would say. Be gentle with yourself, then you'll be gentle with all others. So if I'm rigidly holding myself, I'm a Buddhist nun, I need to be perfect. I'm a Buddhist nun. I'm not a Buddha yet. Not a Buddha, I'm a Buddhist. And we would get people to come to our retreat centers. They'd spend the summer with us, or it was a guest, or it was a new staff member. And they had all these ideas of what Buddhists are supposed to be like. One of them would say to us, this was years ago when we were allowed to smoke cigarettes at centers. Now Rinpoche sees it as a intoxicant, which cigarettes are pretty nasty, right? So usually Buddhist centers, retreat centers might have a designated smoking area. Okay, but generally, but you know, I had a guest that emergency had to take me aside to say to me, I was like, what's wrong? Are you sick? Like, is something, what's wrong? Your cook is smoking cigarettes. She saw our cook, so, you know, and I said, well, he smokes cigarettes. Last time I checked, cigarettes are legal. Okay, what do you know, he's a Buddhist. You know, I'm saying he smokes cigarettes and he's a good practitioner, but he has a habit of smoking cigarettes. You know, people have these ideas, Buddhist nun, you know, I'm a human being. So be gentle with yourself, kind, patient, absolutely. What you said, Barbara, absolutely. Okay. So we've got this definition of the mind according to Tibetan Buddhism, clear and knowing. This may be news for you. Clear and knowing. How do I get to the clarity? Do the clarity of consciousness meditation again and again. We will look at the knowing part later, but it's basically awareness. Your mind's like a mirror, okay? It reflects back things that it's aware of. You know, you see a shape and you have a way of defining what the shape is, what the color means to you. You've learned that over the years from when you're a baby, imprinting language like that. We're aware of certain things. Okay. So, and so in Tibetan, in the language, they don't really have an accurate word for emotions. And it tells you a little bit about their system. Like I was very attracted to Tibetan Buddhism when I heard etymologically, Tibetan language doesn't have a word for guilt. I thought, sign me up. I want that. I want that tradition. Doesn't have a word. We have a word for regret in Tibetan. Regret, when you do a Vajrasattva purification practice with the 4 opponent powers, one of those 4 powers is the power of regret, to do the purification effectively. Great. And you deeply think about something you messed up with your body, speech, or mind. I yelled at that guy, gave somebody the finger. I was really angry. And you look at it with deep regret at how you're harming yourself, harming others. Could be to the point of tears, but you don't leave it there like guilt does. Guilt's this negative, obsessive cycling of the mind. Over and over you revisit. What we do is we have a remedy, Vajrasattva practice, or prostrations, or some kind of purification practice, meditating on emptiness. I have a remedy that I can do. So then have a practice that we can do. So I don't stay there with the guilt. But emotions, disturbing emotions, I mean, they have a word in Tibetan. My Tibetan's not great. Afflictive emotions, nyongmong, klesha in Sanskrit, klesha, delusion, okay, defined as a mental factor that when generated, it causes the mind to be very unpeaceful. I think we get that. We understand. So very unpeaceful. And klesha, which is Tibetan, and sometimes Sanskrit, it's sometimes pronounced slightly different, but klesha is the way I've always heard it. It's very interesting when you have a group of Dharma practitioners, like a center, like Thupten Norbaling. And years ago at Vajrapani, which was a residential community, we had about 15 people living on the property at the time when I was running it. And we would meet every week for dinner to inform the residents that worked offsite what was going on with our staff and what we were proceeding to do, decisions we were making and different things like that. And somebody, one of the residents who'd been there, one of the founders, didn't like one of the decisions we made. So of course, she stood up at the table and was yelling at me because I'm the director, like it's my responsibility. So she was really yelling at me, which is very unusual for her because we were good friends, and she usually wouldn't get into that. And she's yelling at me, and in the middle of yelling at me across the table, she stops and she catches herself because she's a practitioner. And all of a sudden she looks at me and she says, "I'm so sorry, I'm having a klesha attack." Like, it was brilliant because she really caught her mind, what was going on, caught it, stopped it, apologized, sat down, and she was dealing with her own mind. So I heard what she was saying. It was valid. I took it seriously, and we could move from there. I could say, well, you've got a good point. But her delivery was not great. Like, there's other ways she could have, delivered the news to me of her feelings like that. So these are just some words that they would use for these afflictive emotions. And you just notice, when is your mind unpeaceful? They're the cause of the problems for yourself and for others. And Maitreya, who's supposed to be the next Buddha that comes, listed the faults of delusions in one of his famous texts, Abhisamaya Lamkara. He says, delusions destroy yourself, they destroy others, they destroy your morality, they decrease qualities and livelihood. They're despised by Buddhas and special beings like protectors. They bring argument, disreputable birth in places where there's no leisure, where there's degeneration of attainments, where there's non-attainments, and the experience of great suffering. That's what delusion gets you. So you want to kind of understand that as a motivation for you to do the work to counter your delusions more and more, to be vigilant, number one, when they arise, and learn the proper antidotes and things like that. And if you're interested in some further reading, Master Shantideva, who brought us the famous guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, which is sometimes translated as the way of the Bodhisattva. Both are proper. The Bodhicharyavatara, or the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, beautiful book. Chapter 4, there's some verses 28 through 48. Chapter 4 talks about more disadvantages of delusion. There's a lot of them in Buddhism, different books that refer to them and things like that. So the way we deal with them best, according to Tibetan Buddhism, is we work with them again with this middle way that I mentioned, between those two unskillful ways of suppressing or acting out, okay? And so what we're going to do is acknowledge what we do in Buddhism is acknowledge, yep, I'm angry right now. I'm really depressed right now. I'm not suppressing them. I'm just noticing these experiences. And then I'm going to work with them to apply the antidotes, to dissolve them. I'm going to do some meditation to continue to transform my mind from something negative to positive states. I'm going to work very hard on avoiding acting them out because I realize the harm that showers on myself or others. Okay. So let me bring, just before we close, I want to talk about the first method, general ways of dealing with emotions before I get into specifics, general ways that you can start using right now. Some of you already are. Number one, Mindfulness or self-awareness? Mindfulness or self-awareness? I think you're very familiar with that already. Mindfulness is not necessarily Dharma. The mindfulness movement is very big right now in the world, especially the States. The father of the mindfulness movement in the States is a wonderful guy, John Kabat-Zinn. And years ago, when he presented the program to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, His Holiness was very happy, and he said, wonderful. He grabbed his hand. His Holiness is very physical. Wonderful. Just don't call it Dharma. Okay. So Dharma is really where mindfulness is very much being aware of something arising in the mind or your experience. Dharma is then going to counter the delusion, where mindfulness doesn't necessarily counter it. So it's a real distinction, but mindfulness I find tremendously helpful and a wonderful intro and way in to starting to get to know your mind. Okay. So what you do with mindfulness, and something you can work on this week or for the rest of your life, is when you're aware, just beginning of the arisal in your mind of a disturbing emotion. You're just noticing, and you can notice constriction. You might feel tightness in your heart, a lump in your throat, headache. You know, we have these actual physical restrictions. And the reason is you have a subtle energy system in your body that we use with higher level practices like Tantra. Okay. You can't really use them until you've been properly empowered in a tantric empowerment. But there is this subtle energy system. And the reason you feel constriction in your heart or a lump in your throat or a headache is because every time you have a delusion, the subtle energy system is affected and blocked. The channels get blocked and they create illness in your body. So I'm not, I don't want you to be fearful of like, oh my God, I got angry at him. No, we have to work where we are. We just work with it. But if you ever notice the actual physical discomfort, yes, and you see people who are really angry, their face gets red, they have a vein here in the middle. And if they took their blood pressure, the blood pressure is escalating. And how many people that are, promote a lot of anger end up with heart attacks? Like you see it has an effect on the physical system. Okay. So initially, all I want you to do is notice. And you're going to first notice maybe discomfort in body, but notice the discomfort in your mind as well. Just mindfulness, self-awareness, just start there. Like, yeah, every time I'm afraid, I don't like how it feels. That's good enough this week. Good enough. Like before you learn to counter, it's just like, what happens is we're so distracted. I go right on my phone, I turn the TV on, the radio, whatever, and I totally ignore what I'm feeling. I don't like how I'm feeling. So I'm just going to glom into something else, and I'm going to go to the refrigerator and eat and pretend I don't really feel lousy right now. Go look at it, but get clear about how you feel. It's uncomfortable. Negativity in the mind is uncomfortable. That motivates us to want to change the negativity. If you keep denying it, you keep ignoring it, you're just going to go on with the same patterns. And I like some mindfulness practice where mindfulness isn't necessarily working to change it. And to some degree, that's okay in the beginning. You're just becoming aware. We're so freaked out in the United States of looking at being still for a moment. I like that mindfulness sometimes just hangs out with, I'm not really okay right now, but you know what? This is where I am. And that's enough. That I can't fix it right now. So I'm just observing that this is where I am. One example I give is when I was running Vajrapani in California, as a director, you're the boss, and people would give you a lot of power. Our staff, we had wonderful staff, but some days I'd come down to work, and it was a lot holding that position at times. It's a lot of responsibility, and I come down to work, and sometimes I wasn't in a great mood. But I wasn't angry or anything. I was just kind of sad or just a little down. And I'd walk in the building and I'd see people looking at me because the housekeeper wanted to buy a new vacuum. So she was kind of monitoring what kind of mood I was in. Is this a good time to ask her? And the cook might want something. And he's like, she doesn't seem to be in a good space right now. But they were very sweet people, very kind people. We were like family. So I could see somebody later coming up to my office and saying, "Are you okay?" And then trying to like fix it. And there were sometimes I said to them, "It's okay. You don't need to fix it right now. I just feel this way today. I'm just a little down today, but tomorrow will be different." And usually tomorrow's different. So sometimes it's okay to just hang with, I'm watching my mind, I'm aware, I'm just a little down right now. Or I'm afraid, I'm a little afraid that, and I'm doing whatever I can to monitor the fear and making sure that I am safe and the house is locked or whatever you need to do, that no fire is going to start. And you do what you can do, but sometimes I just observe, this is the mind state right now. Just karma. It's karmic bubble coming up like that. Okay, mindfulness. Any last questions before we finish for the day? Okay, everybody clear? You've got clarity of consciousness meditation, which I think possibly, Anil, they make recordings, so maybe you can access a recording if you want to do a guided recording of it again. Perfectly fine to watch a guided meditation. There is also, that meditation is on my my website. Can I find it for you quickly? Anyway, let me just put in the chat, if you need this, my website, which is connected to, there's the website, connected to a YouTube channel. And what I'll do next week is try to find the, let me see if I can quickly find the clarity of consciousness, because I have the exact timing for it in where it is. If I can find it quickly. Let me see. I used to have it broken out here. Okay, I don't see it right now, but I can find, but anyway, you can get the recording from this. You can try to do that, and I'd like you to try to look at mindfulness. Watch mindfulness of just what's coming up. Try to identify your main one or two top delusions. That's what you want to work on first. So what I'd like to do in closing is I'd like to dedicate whatever positive energy we've created from our gathering today. I want to thank Tupta Norbaling and Anil. Thank you so much for hosting. Thank all of you. I thank all of you for joining. And I'd really like to dedicate to all the people suffering with COVID around the planet to be healed instantly, and for the spread of this pandemic all over the world to be reduced as quickly as possible. And for those who've recently passed away of COVID or something else, may they immediately take a good rebirth to become enlightened quickly to benefit all, and for the long lives of our precious teachers. Thank you so much. And if you're interested, there's additional teachings coming up on my website you can click into. And I wish you all the best.